Hey guys, welcome to this episode of the WIP Workshop today. Is it episode 10? Ooh, it's episode 10. That's exciting. We've had 10 episodes of the WIP Workshop, so hopefully you've enjoyed, and that's really cool. It's really exciting. I completely forgot that it was 10 episodes in. That's cool. Are we doing anything special today? No. But, yay. Quick little side note before we begin. I apologize. Normally I have these up every second Tuesday, which should have been yesterday. And I apologize. Just with the way things are in the world right now, I'm very, very busy and I'm focused on doing other things. And I didn't realize it was Tuesday until I went to bed and was like, oh, I was supposed to post WIP Workshop today. Oops. So apologies. I think this is literally the first time that's ever happened to me in like 2-3 consecutive years of posting videos. So that's new. So I apologize, but hey, everyone makes mistakes and that's okay. So apologies that this is a day late, but here's your episode. And I hope you enjoy. So the episode of WIP Workshop that today we're going to be talking about a whip. Well, we're going to be talking about 3 whips actually, and hopefully we can give you guys some ideas to how to advance your work in progress mocks and make them finalized mocks. And of course, even if your whip isn't featured in today's episode, be sure to listen in and listen to some of the advice, take a look at some of the pictures and mocks that we talk about, and hopefully that can get some of your creative juices flowing as well, so that we can inspire you to build other stuff. Yeah. All right, let's begin. So the first whip today, this is by Oblivion. And I'm going to read the description he says here. He says, "Hi, Cossy. Hello, Oblivion." He didn't actually say hello, Oblivion. That was me saying it back, but I'm sure you understood. He said, "I've been working on this whip for a while, and I'm not sure if you've seen it around Discord. I've been stuck on a head design for a while, even spending an entire day messing around with a head. What do you think would be a good head design on this mock? Any other suggestions would be much appreciated." Heck yeah, thanks, man. Awesome that you've been sharing it on the Discord server there. I jumped into a voice chat on Discord the other day. Great fun. So be sure to head on down, and hey, maybe I'll be on a voice chat as well. But awesome as well that you have been, like you said, you spent like a whole day trying to figure out a head design. That's awesome. Always great to hear that, because yeah, if you do have a problem, that's always one of the best ways to figuring it out, is just trying new things, experimenting, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't. And it's entirely possible that you can do that, come up with 20 designs and none of them work, and then you go somewhere else to get a bit more advice, or after the 20th, 21st or whatever, you're like, oh, actually that did work. Or even after the second one that you make, it works, So always good to be experimenting and playing like that. Good on you. And yes, of course, happy to help you out, and totally fine that you did play around with it and still couldn't get anywhere. That's okay, but I'll offer my 2 cents and hopefully that can help. But first off, this mock is looking really, really cool. I love the lower leg design using some of those curved slope system pieces there. Those look really, really cool. Great use of those pieces. Really nice sort of shape and form to that lower leg there. And speaking of the legs, the way you've used those dark red Exoforce armor pieces there, and then on the top of the shoulders there, nice consistency, sort of those repeating those same textures and pieces there on different elements of the mock. That looks fantastic. And it's great to see how well that flows in with that Antros mask there as well. Surprisingly very similar textures there. So a nice sense of unity there for sure. Really, really cool. Really, really cool. Looking great so far. So, head design, what could you do? Well, let me show you this mock by Mitch Henry, which is called Adam. So this head design is a little bit more of an abstract head design, using a bunch of different sort of system pieces. It almost looks a little bit like a bomb that he's just sort of put on top of his head there. I like that. I like the idea of going very abstract with it. When I used to do acting a lot, one of my acting coaches would say to me a lot, or I should say to everyone a lot, they'd say that, yes, you can think of something very literally or do something very literally on stage or when you're performing, but never forget that the abstract as well is something that you can be a little bit more afraid to play with, but can still be so beneficial for what you're doing. And in your head, it might seem abstract and that it won't work, but when you actually try it, it suddenly is very human and very real. And I think that exact sort of same advice can be applied with art and with mocking and with Lego for sure. So do that. Play around with head designs that you think wouldn't work at all, and try it, and maybe it will work, or maybe it won't. That's the thing with playing with abstract stuff that's out there and different and unique and weird and away from the norm. It's very likely it won't work, but it's also surprisingly likely that it might work. There's little happy accidents, So I would definitely recommend, playing around with that, seeing what kind of weird, unique head design you could do. Whether it is like this and it's a completely different color to the rest of the mock, a bit of white thrown in there, or if it is just uniquely shaped. There's no definitive mouth or eyes. It is just this weird dome or this weird barrel or something, or it's a bomb like this, Play around with some of the abstract. You never know what that might be able to do for your mock. It's really unique, really cool. Also, Mitch has put some clothing on here. I don't really think clothing would fit your mock, but maybe. It could be cool. I don't know. Again, play around with the abstract. Let's see what it does, So that's one idea for a head design. Another mock by Mitch. This is called, I don't even want to try and pronounce that, Eisenganga Magnum Bob. This mock is called Bob. It's not, but we'll call it that for now. So this head design here is a little bit different. It looks a little bit more drone-like, and I almost feel like your mock has this very organic aesthetic. To me, it looks like a human wearing armor of some kind, very sort of smooth flowing armor, whereas this is a lot more sort of robotic, jagged, metallic in texture, which I think is a little bit of a different look and feel to what you've got, but I don't mind the idea of, again, kind of focusing on the abstract. Could you do a sort of mono-eye head design like this, or play around with some dark red CCBS shells to kind of make like some sort of looking kind of drone or cone head like this and put it on the mock? Maybe it would work. I do feel like it's a little bit too out there and different to what you're doing sort of texturally and thematically and with the design you've currently got. But I don't know, I really wanted to include this just to really kind of pinpoint and highlight how important it can be to, just think outside the box. And I think that would definitely be something that would help you with the process you currently had, where a lot of what you were trying just didn't work. So thinking really outside the box now, maybe that'll help. I just kind of wanted to hammer that home again. I don't know how much exactly this will work, but I'm hoping that kind of that rough idea or concepts that this head design has, elements of that you could possibly use to inspire different things. But let me show you two Lego related images now, not mocks, images. And I think these ones are very directly related to what you've done. So this one here is of this cool looking samurai guy here. Almost sort of like a robotic samurai, which I think actually surprisingly fits your mock. I mean, look at those shoulders on this image here. They're fairly reminiscent to yours, a little less spiky, but fairly similar in texture and shape there. So you could do a head design that's a bit like this, a bit like a sort of samurai helmet. You could use some system claw pieces. You could play around with different sort of system elements to kind of get this sort of curved shape, or even some Hero Factory armor parts maybe to get that awesome curved shape like that. I think that's something that could work quite well. And could be very unique, definitely, especially because you've already used system on the lower legs as well. I'll transition to this next image here because I think this kind of goes hand in hand. This is a Halo Elite. Looking at that head design there, just the general texture and shape of an Elite's head like this kind of reminds me of the pieces you've used for the lower legs, those system elements. You could almost very much, if you've got more of them, use those as the sort of main basis of designing a head design. And it would be consistent too, because in a similar way to how you've repeated that same dark red armor piece on the shoulders and the upper legs, repeating elements that were previously on the lower legs on the head, you get some nice consistency there. So I think kind of doing something similar to this, a very sort of long flowing backwards curved head design like that looks like this sort of curved shell of armor, could be really unique and really different, really cool. So maybe something like that. And you might have to play around with building a more custom head. Custom, of course, when I say that, I don't mean, cutting pieces or anything like that. I mean, instead of using, pre-made pieces, like your stock standard mask and putting that on top, instead you're using a whole bunch of different pieces to make a part that could work. So maybe something like that. Maybe that can help you there, and hopefully it does, whether it's the Elite, whether it's that Samurai from before, or any of the other system mocks there. Hopefully I've got a few more ideas for the head design that you might be looking for there. But regardless, I think you're doing some pretty solid work with how the mock looks so far. So do take pride in that, Yes, you can't figure out this head design right now. You will definitely be able to figure it out soon, of course. But be proud of yourself, because I think you've done a really good job so far with the rest of this mock. So awesome stuff. Next one now. This is by Cole Dragon. This one does actually have a name. I think it is called... actually, does it? Oopsie. Is it called Name Test? Maybe. I don't know. Well, the email says WIP Workshop Name Test 08 by Cole Dragon. I wasn't sure if you sent 8 pictures and that's why it was 08, but I think this is called Test 08. Regardless, it's a whip. Here you go. Enjoy. Looking good so far. I'm really liking this sci-fi drone, almost sort of military look that this mock has here. I love how you've played around with all these different tires, really creating a unique texture on this. The asymmetry is cool, like he's got a robotic leg and a robotic arm there, and this funky kind of winged piece element there on the side of the head almost looks like some sort of robotic kind of tech thing that he's placed on the side of his head that houses certain gadgets or electronics or something like that. It's a unique design and seems very in line with sort of robotic humanoid drone made for the military or something like that. That's at least the vibe I'm getting, of course. Just a quick side note, by the way. Love you, Cold Dragon. I don't mean this like I'm not mad or anything. You've sent a few emails in the past, and every time you do, you include one picture per email, and then you'll send like 5 or 6 different emails. Just a friendly reminder, you can send multiple images in the one email. Again, I'm not mad. It's all good. But it does clog up my email a little bit there, and does make things a little bit harder when I'm recording. But just a side note for the future. But otherwise, all good, man. So let me help you out. I assume with this mock, there wasn't too much of a description about what what sort of stuff you wanted me to specifically focus on. But I imagine sort of at the moment the torso is pretty bare bones. So we'll focus a little bit on that and a few other elements here. So let us now look at this first. Well, let's look at this first mock here by Mitch Henry, which we already saw before, and I'm not going to pronounce its name again. But I think the head design is actually reasonably similar to yours, and the aesthetic is also reasonably similar to yours, I would argue. So I think it would be a really great way of looking at this mock and taking a little bit of inspiration. This mock here, I think, really excels at the fact that it combines very greeble heavy textures on the torso with smoother elements. So it very much looks like this is a robot that's been designed with all these different wires and things, and then armor's been put over the top of it to protect it. And so I think you could also really lean into that, especially with how your mock currently has that asymmetry of like the sort of techie robot leg and the techie robot arm, and then the black over the top. You could kind of play around with that a bit more and do something very similar to what Mitch has done here of really finding ways of making the armor look like it's over the top of a lot of kind of wires and tech, like it's like this padded armor of some kind. That could be pretty cool, So you could do something similar to that, maybe even give it a cool gun that's a bit similar to what Mitch has done here, that very popping yellow there. That's pretty cool. I'll now move on, there's a few ideas in that mock there. I'll move on to a couple images and then I'll show you another mock as well. So here's just this cool robot that I found. What I like so much about this, the head design's a bit of a departure from what you've done, but taking a look specifically at the arms and the legs, what I love so much about it is all these exposed wires and this very sort of spiddly, thin look to the limbs that it's kind of just being held up by a couple sort of different metal rods, and then wires are kind of being fed around that. It'd be interesting if you did something similar to that, because it's a very robotic look, and I think would fit the texture of this mock fairly well and fit the kind of general aesthetic. So maybe you could do something similar to that with the limbs, wrapping bits of wire around it or having it be a little bit more sort of spindly, because it's certainly something you could get away with on a robot like this. So that could be cool. The next mock here, I think this is very in line with what you have made. At least in my point of view, you might have a different sort of backstory in mind with this mock, but from what I'm currently seeing in these images, this is what I'm imagining it to look like. Is essentially a sort of dystopian future of militarized robot drones like this. I think the head design is reasonably similar to yours. It'd be great for you to give them this super cool gun, much like the one we see in this image here, or even the one we saw on the mock before from Mitch. But this, again, very similar to what Mitch's mock has. You can see areas of this where it is a lot more sort of a robot with its wires and its tech exposed. But then specifically on the chest, there is dominant larger armor that's kind of protecting that and padding it out so that when he does enter a war zone or something, he's protected and he's not just going to short circuit the minute a bullet or debris or anything lands in his technological inner body. So it'd be cool kind of playing with that, finding the balance between, padded armor and exposed wires, getting that cool kind of juxtaposition between the two. And then the other awesome thing about this is how much this mock has little bits of camouflage or little bits of cloth over the top of it, just to whether that's elements of protection, so that he's camouflaged and hidden, or it's just to kind of paint the fact that like this is a military robot, he's wearing camouflage, you're aware of that fact. So it could be fun to play around with different kind of cloth elements, whether they're official or not, whether it's some of those tan cloth elements from the Ray Ultra Build set, or you play around with some minifigure capes or something, you just kind of intertwine them in, very similar to this, so that it looks like he is wearing little bits of camouflaged cloth to disguise himself a bit. That's a cool idea, I reckon. Let's see a fairly similar arm design to the one I was showing you before. Kind of does look a little bit more spiddly, a little bit more robotic, like it's sort of, got different pistons and things in there, and the sort of circular joints in the middle. That's certainly something you could lean into as well there, for sure. It's a really, really cool design. I like it a lot. Could be something that would work well for you. Next one here. This is by Gamma Bomb and is called Worker Drone. Again, I think this is fairly in line with what you've got. Could be cool to add a little backpack like this mock has here with a big old aerial coming out the back. And it could also be fun to play around with stickers, whether they're official or not. This mock here uses some official stickers like a number plate and different kind of caution symbols there in red and white. So if you've got some stickers from some Lego sets that you have in your household, could be good to put them on the mock because it could fit that aesthetic very well in a similar manner to this mock here. Pretty cool. I think it's a great idea. I think there's a fair few concepts you could be playing with there for sure. Hopefully that's helped a lot. But yeah, nice work so far. Good, sir. Looking forward to seeing what you do with this mock in the end. On to the last mock now. This is Lightning Dragon. It's by Jordan Austin. And I'll read what he said in the email here. He says, for Lightning Dragon, he says, I'm debating on adding wings on the top or swapping out the front legs for wings, so it would be more of a wyvern instead. I also wanted to add more armor onto the legs and make the tail look more natural or more scaly. Cool. I can help you with that, good sir. But let's talk a bit about the mock before I show you a few examples and things here. Great use of CCBS so far, specifically around the kind of neck and the front of the torso there. Real compact, nicely designed, looking great. I love the little Paraka spine piece there that you've put on the minifigure Paraka spine, not an actual massive Paraka spine element. No, the little kind of grass element in black that you've put on the front of the bottom of the lower jaw there. It's a fun little addition there. It works really well. But definitely one of my favorite elements of this, you were saying, whether you want to make the tail kind of spiky or scaly in some kind. So far on the back, you've used those rock element pieces that came on a few Hero Factory sets, and they've appeared in a few other colors and a few other places here and there. I love that. Sometimes you can see dragons that have spikes and people will use, typical like teeth or spike elements, and there's nothing wrong with that. It always looks good. But the aesthetic of those pieces is still that rough, jagged texture. And it really reminds me of a dragon, the fact that they can have a very, very strong hide that's really hard to pierce with a sword or something like that in, different forms of mythology or myth and legend and stuff. I love that. I think it's really, really fitting. It's a great way of using those pieces. And to me, it really stops them looking like rocks, which is what they really very much look like. And it starts to give it that kind of scaly aesthetic. It's quite beautiful. I think it's really, really cool. So I definitely recommend possibly continuing that. And you could even transfer that onto the tail to some degree. I think it could work really well and definitely give this mock a very unique aesthetic for sure. I'll move on to some Bionicle mocks here that could help you out. This first one's by Matt Goldberg and is called Frankai the Everlasting. So this is pretty similar to what you're doing here, using a lot of those Dragon Bolt elements. So you could take a fair bit of inspiration from this mock here, that's for sure. Certain things that Matt's done very well here is like the horns around the head of this dragon. Great idea. I think that's a great idea. You could play around with doing certain things like that really kind of take it away from the original aesthetic of Dragon Bolt. And you kind of had a few the kind of black horns and things on your dragon currently, but you could expand it even more, almost give him sort of tusks, or whether or not that's hair or something is a bit hard to tell, but could work well. The wings on this dragon here use some Lord of the Rings boat sail elements. Maybe you've got a few boat sail elements lying around that you could use. So, this mock here, of course, puts those wings on the back of this dragon, and it works really well. But, like you said, you might want to change up the arms and make them wings instead. Well, I think that's a decision that's completely up to you and how you want the mock to look. But, how we're seeing it here is in that manner. But of course, I think both ideas sound really good. And I think that is just down to what you want to do, of course. I don't want to force your hand, as whatever sounds most fun for you is definitely the decision you should go with here. But this is definitely a great way that you could approach designing them. And if you are planning on putting them into the back, might not be a bad idea to study this mock a little bit and see how he's done it and how you could do sort of similar elements yourself. Next mock, this is by Mitch Phillips, and it's called Gamma Dragon. So you see on this mock here a very spiky aesthetic, specifically going down the tail, which was again what you were saying. And that is surprisingly a pretty similar design to yours. We look at the tail, it's the same thing, just CCBS bones and CCBS shells on top. And then getting a big piece of flex tube, probably a couple pieces of flex tube there, and feeding Hero Factory shells into it, and some spike elements too, to get it to really look like this sort of scaly, spiky aesthetic. It's beautiful. It's really cool. And it wouldn't be that hard to do exactly that on your mock as well. Just get some clip pieces, just get some flex tube, get some shells and some claws and things like that, and you could very much recreate it there. So you could do something fairly similar. Again, we're seeing another wing design here as well, using some old, I think slightly rare panel pieces from a Mars mission, or no, it was a NASA set as well. It was a Mars rover set. So hey, if you have that lying around, also could be a great piece for you to use. But yeah, it's looking good. It's looking good, and there's some stuff on this that I reckon you could definitely put on your mock to make it look just as good. And finally, I'll just throw in one more image here of a dragon that is not Lego. But what I like so much about this is this really unique kind of horned aesthetic around the head and also on the kind of shoulders of this dragon. It's just unique. It's just different. It kind of almost looks a bit like a crown, or it's just, I don't know, it's just unique. So is that something you could do on your mock here? You know, what sort of stuff could you put on that is just different or just unique? You know, maybe you want to go with a very stereotypical dragon that isn't sort of thinking outside the box here, but maybe you want to do something like this, give him this funky, different horned aesthetic on his head or on different parts of the body, or I don't know, just put something on there that you wouldn't typically see on a dragon, or you might see on a dragon, but not in that way, and you kind of change it up and play with it a bit. Could be something you figure out, could be something you play with there, or you don't. Completely up to you, but again, kind of like I said at the start of the episode here, I always like to get people to kind of think a bit outside the box, try new things, experiment and play, and I think the kind of concepts in this image are definitely at the heart of that. So have a think, see if that works for you. But that has been it for this episode of the WIP Workshop, our 10th episode today. Hopefully you enjoyed, and hopefully you got a few ideas or a few concepts you can play around with as you're building your mocks, or if these are your mocks that were featured in today's episode, hopefully I've helped you out with getting you to get a few more ideas to advance those WIPs into finalized mocks. And of course, as I say every episode, if you are looking for a little bit more advice than what I currently gave you in this episode, be sure to reach out to me on my social media, and I'm happy to provide more for you. Speaking of social media as well, all my links to my social media are in the description. All of the links to the mocks that you saw in today's episode are also in the description, as well as the links to the social media of the people whose WIPs we featured today. You can check all that out there. And if you would like to see your WIP on the WIP Workshop, or your mock in the Bionicle Inspiration series, the email you're currently seeing on your screen is the email to send that to. Send me as many pictures as you want, as much or as little a description as that you want in that email. Put it in there, and then one day it'll appear on the show. But if you're specifically submitting for the WIP Workshop, be sure to put the words WIP somewhere in the email so that I know that that is a submission for the WIP Workshop. Sweet. Well, that's it for our 10th episode today. I hope you very much enjoyed, because I enjoyed recording it, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy building. Bye for now.